Hi guys, today I'm going to be talking about expanding and extending your child's utterances and language. So if you've been watching my videos for a while, you've seen me talk about eliciting first words, eliciting functional communication when maybe your child doesn't have a way to communicate yet, or maybe they aren't talking yet, and how do we get there? Well, this is really that next step when your child is talking and they are finding their vocabulary and they're labeling things and they're consistently speaking. This is the way that we support those words that they are obtaining. And we also push them to the next step to increase their length of utterance and also increase the amount of vocabulary that they have to describe things. So the first thing that speech therapists will look at or do if your child is in speech therapy is something we call expansion. And the way we do that is really just making the child's utterance longer, and we make it grammatically correct. So if they say, "eat apple," you would model the phrase for them, "I want to eat an apple." So previous to this video, I've talked about keeping your language short and concise when your child is learning words. That's still very, very important. And I stand by this, especially for kids that are late talkers and really still learning words and may not have as many one-word utterance consistently. But as soon as they start having more than one-word utterance and they start really talking, but maybe they're not talking yet in complete utterances, that's when we really want to make the shift to give them those grammatically correct sentences so that we're modeling what an appropriate utterance would sound like. And they will continue to gain words and lengthen their utterance. But again, we want to be a model for them and we want to give them the way to do that. The other thing that speech pathologists will do is extending. And this is really where we get into the descriptors of different objects. And I absolutely love something called the Expanding Expression Tool by Sarah Smith. And this is something that speech pathologists use as a guide or an association strategy to allow the child to describe an object in a lot of different ways. So it's building on their vocabulary skills, but it's also building on extending the amount of things that they say and also the amount of words they say in one utterance. So I'll explain what this is. And for parents out there, I really urge you, and I urge the parents that I work with their child on with this, I urge them to really talk about things in the child's environment in this way. So, for example, an apple. We'll go back to that. An apple is not just an apple, right? There are so many other ways that we can describe an apple. We can describe an apple by saying that an apple is a type of fruit and we eat it. So, let me back up. We can first talk about the category. So we can talk about what type of thing it is. So an apple is a type of fruit. We can talk about what it does for us or what it does functionally. An apple, we eat an apple. Or maybe if you're at a cider mill or the orchard, you pick an apple, right? The next one is, what does it look like? So this is where you talk about maybe the size, you talk about the shape, maybe you talk about what color it is. So the apple is red, it's round, it's small, or maybe it's a big apple. So you talk about those type of things. And then leading off of that, you can also talk about what it's made of. So an apple is made from a seed. And then you can start to talk about the different parts as well. We're already at 5 different descriptors. So you can talk about it has a stem, it has the skin, it has the juice, the core. There are so many different vocabulary words, see, to just describing this one thing. Then you also want to talk about where you find it. So if the child is familiar with an orchard or a cider mill, you can talk about it there. Or maybe the apple just comes from the store if the child doesn't have the experience of the other two. And then the last thing you can talk about is any personal relations that the child has with it. So what does an apple mean to them? Maybe they always have an apple in their lunch. Maybe their grandma always has apples. Maybe there's an apple tree across the yard. Whatever is their personal relation. And these are not all always going to describe every single thing, but keeping that in your mind, that there are all these different ways to describe one object, I found is really helpful for parents, because instead of them just reiterating, yes, that is a chair. When the child says chair, they can say, ooh, soft chair, big chair, or chair in kitchen, or just really reiterate that. And that extending can happen long before you're expanding so much on their grammatically correct utterances, because you're building on that vocabulary. And that's why I like it so much, because when I work with these parents, I feel like I see almost an aha moment when I pick up my pen and I'm like, a pen is not just a pen. And then I start listing off all of these different things that we can say about it. And that's how these children learn, right? Is when they're exposed to these words. And think of how many words you can just expose them to just from one item. So it's one of my favorite things to do with kids. I think it's so important. And I, again, think it's really great for parents to keep in the back of their mind when they are talking about things that their child is learning. So if you have any questions about that, let me know.